Is not dissimilar to what has happened before when autocrats
A reminder, you can continue to watch this live hearing online at cspan.org. Here on C-SPAN, U.S. House gaveling in next. We'll bring you live coverage. They will today likely pass the 2014 omnibus spending bill, funding the federal government through the end of fiscal year 2014. Yesterday, by voice vote, they passed that short-term spending measure. That is on the Senate floor. Vote coming up shortly, and now live to the House floor here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. Prayer will be offered today by our guest chaplain, Reverend Gary Grogan, Stone Creek Church, Urbana, Illinois.
Let's pray together, please. Heavenly Father, thank you for the stewards of our government that are gathered here today, those who are willing to serve under grueling public scrutiny. I pray that you would grant them wisdom and grace and fortitude to execute their responsibilities. Lord, you know as a nation we are facing some of the biggest challenges in our young history. And we ask for your guiding hand, we seek your guiding hand to do what we cannot do. We acknowledge your ability to move us past our failures, our sins, and our humanity. I pray that this session would be a time of humility and healing and laying down differences to unite us, even as your Son, Jesus Christ, laid down his life for us, a greater purpose. Help our government officials to lay down their own agendas for the greater good, for providing for the underserved, for caring for the disenfranchised, and for fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves. Bless and protect these men and women and their families, for those who would be unreasonable and those who would try to harm them. We pray, Lord, that you would bless the United States of America. In your name we pray. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 1, Rule 1, I demand a vote on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal.
Questions on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal? Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. The journal stands approved. Gentleman from South Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, I object to the vote on the grounds that a quorum is not present and make the point of order that a quorum is not present.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question are postponed. The Pledge of Allegiance today will be led by the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Mullen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Without objection, the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Davis, is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor Pastor Gary Grogan. Pastor Grogan has served as the lead pastor of Stone Creek Church in Urbana, Illinois for over 25 years, and today he is our pastor. Thank you for leading the prayer. Pastor Grogan and his lovely wife Bonnie have 2 children and 5 grandchildren. Both of his children also serve in local church ministry. Under Pastor Grogan's leadership, Stone Creek has grown into a thriving, multi-ethnic congregation, leading many community outreach programs focused on justice and compassion. Some of the many projects Pastor Grogan has led include fundraising to build educational and community facilities, assisting those trapped in sex trafficking, support for returning war veterans from Afghanistan, and providing medical supplies and other necessities to victims of natural disasters. The Bible says in Proverbs 11:25, those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed. Pastor Grogan has spent a lifetime refreshing and encouraging those around him. I want to offer my heartfelt thanks again to Pastor Grogan and his entire congregation in Urbana, Illinois, for allowing him the opportunity to be here today. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The Chair will entertain up to 15 further requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the distinguished Speaker of the House seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask to have consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Speaker of the House, the gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
You know, today in our country, too many families and small businesses are struggling. Unemployment remains high, Wages are stagnant. Prices for everything from gas to groceries are rising faster than paychecks. The middle class is getting squeezed, and the policies from this administration have not worked. 5 years after the President took office, many Americans are still asking the question, where are the jobs? Unfortunately, instead of helping to create jobs, the President's focused on making it easier to live without one. The House is focused on making it easier to find a job, to break the status quo, not to sustain it. We've passed dozens of bills that are sitting over in the Senate. Our focus is on ending this new normal, improving employment, not unemployment. The President says he wants to make this year a year of action. Sounds good to me. He can start by calling on the leaders over in the Senate to pass our jobs bills. He can start by approving the Keystone Pipeline and the tens of thousands of jobs it will create. He can start by leading on trade promotion authority that will help employers and provide more employment in our country. And he can start by working with us on education and skills training to give people more opportunities. Let's make this a year of bipartisan action. I'm sure the American people would welcome that. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
To address the House floor for 1 minute.
And the gentleman is recognized.
I rise to recognize January as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. As unbelievable as it may sound, it's estimated that 20.9 million people were victims of some form of labor, forced labor, including trafficking in 2012. Most of these victims, sadly, were women and children. And while we may believe or hope to believe that this is happening across oceans, it's actually occurring rampantly across the East Bay. I saw this firsthand when I worked for 7 years as a prosecutor in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, mostly with these victims who were too often young teenage girls. We cannot sit by as millions of people are exploited in this way, denigrated, demeaned, and disparaged. It's in this month that we recommit ourselves to ending these horrors of slavery and human trafficking once and for all. My home county of Alameda, under the direction of District Attorney Nancy O'Malley, is doing her part. They run a coordinated effort called Heat Watch to fight trafficking. In fact, District Attorney O'Malley recently announced a massive public relations campaign to draw attention to this issue and help victims. I have one of the posters, and I hope people will call 510-645-9388 if they suspect trafficking is happening. With their hard work and around the world, we can put this to an end, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition? The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of the American dream. Our country is a land of entrepreneurs, and we get up every morning, put our boots on, and go to work. Americans should have the opportunity to have a good job and a good life, rather than develop a life of dependency on unemployment. As a business owner, I don't want my company to simply maintain status quo. In the business community, if you don't grow, you die. So why would we want to keep our country status quo? If we only focus on maintaining our current unemployment structure and we don't focus on job creation, we simply are admitting we don't want to grow. The goal should be to provide a way forward for people, not keep them on government assistance even longer. We need to focus on ways to combat joblessness. Let's rein in overreaching regulations that's killing jobs. Let's grow the private sector. Let's grow the energy sector, and let's approve the Keystone Pipeline. The result will be the creation of private sector jobs and living above status quo. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition? And the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker. Today I rise in honor of 5-year-old Morgan Stewart, who, despite suffering from spinal muscular atrophy that affects his muscle movement and leaves him in a wheelchair, has been an inspiration to us all. Some may question whether bipartisanship is real. and I say it's alive and getting better. Take, for instance, the recent joint venture by myself and my neighbor, Dr. Paul Brown, to bring cheer to a young man in his community. This young 5-year-old dreamed of being a policeman, and I'm proud to say that the Covington Police Department, which is split between Dr. Brown's district and my district, made this happen. Young Morgan always wanted to be a police officer. In conjunction with honoring him, 11 Alive TV and us held a Officer Morgan Day, and he was sworn in as the newest member of the Covington Police Department. And just hours after he was sworn in, he was able to solve a bank robbery, an art heist, and he secured the freedom of a kidnapped mascot. It was a great day in Covington, and his unwavering bravery grabbed all of our hearts and raised our spirits. I thank Dr. Brown for his involvement, and I yield back. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
And the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to acknowledge the accomplishments of Morgan Stewart, a 5-year-old boy from Covington, Georgia. Morgan was born with a genetic condition that affects his muscle movement and confines him to a wheelchair. However, Morgan's physical limitations have in no way hindered his goals of becoming a police officer. When the Covington, Georgia Police Department heard of Morgan's dreams, they sprang into action, swearing him in as a police officer. Then on December the 17th, 2013, the town of Covington celebrated Officer Morgan Day, and Morgan Stewart was cheered on as he fought crime and captured the bad guys during Covington's annual Christmas parade. Morgan even teamed up with the basketball star Shaquille O'Neal to rescue a cat from a tree. On behalf of the United States Congress, I commend Officer Morgan for his service as a police officer and thank him for the strong example that he sets for all those who face medical and physical hardships. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Ohio seek recognition? The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to urge our Republican leadership to immediately renew the emergency unemployment insurance that expired December the 28th. It affects 1.3 million families. Failing to extend the emergency unemployment insurance will cost the economy some 240,000 jobs this month. You see, I believe you can extend the emergency unemployment insurance and grow the economy at the same time. These families depend on it to put a roof over their head, to feed and take care of their families. In my district in Ohio, there are 26,000 individuals unemployed. I say, let's work together as Democrats and Republicans and make a difference for the families who count on us. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House in 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
And the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, in a recent Washington Times op-ed, David Keene writes, quote, lengthy unemployment benefits that actually encourage people to drop out of the workforce and minimum wage laws that make it difficult for young and poor to reach the first step on the ladder of success are, like the rhetoric of progressive populists, attacks on the American dream, end of quote. The most recent jobs reports provides no certainty that our economy is on its way to a full, healthy recovery. The unemployment rate continues rates simply because people are discouraged and have given up the search for a job. The American people are resilient, hardworking, and need limited government. The President and Washington Democrats continually support big government, which destroys jobs and undermines small businesses' ability to grow. House Republicans have a clear path forward to put American people back to work. I urge the President and Senate Democrats to change course and support plans to create jobs. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we'll never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute and revise and expand my remark.
And the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of tens of thousands of my fellow Texans, the working poor and the unemployed, whom our economic recovery is leaving behind. Blessed with ample resources, many of our nation's leading companies and universities, and can-do attitude, Texas has been America's leader in job creation and economic growth for the past decade. Unfortunately, this economic success has not reached all Texans. Last year, the Labor Department announced that over 450,000 Texans earn at or below the federal minimum wage, more than any other state in the country. Nationwide, 3.6 million Americans earn at or below minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. This is just over $15,000 for someone working 40 hours a week for a full year, or more than $4,400 below the poverty line for a family of three. And these aren't just kids in high school or college earning minimum wage. Less than a quarter of the minimum wage workers are teenagers, and nearly 40% are over the age of 30. This is simply not right. Nobody, no matter the city, state, or state, can survive, let alone raise a family on $15,000. Madam Speaker, it's time for the economic recovery to benefit all Americans, not just the fortunate. Too many of our friends and neighbors are being left behind, and call on this chamber to bring up legislation that would increase the minimum wage and renew critical emergency unemployment benefits.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Kansas seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I serve on the House Intelligence Committee, where I spend time trying to figure out how to keep Americans safe, and on the Energy and Commerce Committee, where I think about how to keep America free. But today, I want to talk about how American law and our Constitution treats the least amongst us, the unborn. Ultimately, our nation will be judged not by how we treat the most powerful, but by the most powerless. The 41st anniversary of Roe v. Wade will be marked next week, and there'll be a big march here in Washington, D.C. Since 1973, when Roe v. Wade came down, over 400,000 Kansans have been killed. That's more than the largest city in my district, my hometown, Wichita, Kansas. This natural tragedy is why next week thousands of people will come from Kansas, hundreds from south central Kansas alone, for the March for Life. They'll come from all kinds of walks, and they'll speak about this violence that is being done upon our nation. Hundreds of people will get on buses on next Saturday. I hope to greet them there. And after the walk, I hope they'll come to Cannon House Office Building, where we can talk about the importance of this issue to our community in Kansas and to our nation. I look forward to seeing them, and I encourage everyone to come to Washington, D.C. and act on behalf of those who cannot speak for themselves. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Oregon seek recognition?
Request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's been more than 3 weeks since Congress left for a December recess, leaving far too many Americans, including thousands of Oregonians, without access to emergency unemployment benefits. That's a long time for our constituents who are trying to pay their rent, purchase groceries, care for their families, and fill their cars with gas so they can get to job interviews. And now we're planning to leave town again tomorrow for 10 days without addressing this urgent need. My constituents are contacting me, pleading with Congress to understand the challenges they face in this recovering economy. I heard from a college graduate. She previously owned her own business but lost her job in May, and since then she's been retraining to get the skills she'll need. She's ready and willing to work in a new industry. Unemployment benefits, which she is now without, were helping. She is one of too many. Madam Speaker, we must extend emergency unemployment benefits, and we need to do it now. Our constituents can't wait any longer. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to speak to the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, next week marks 41 years since the Supreme Court's Roe v. Wade decision. Nearly 57 million children have lost their lives since then. This genocide of unborn Americans must stop. Congress should respect and defend innocent human life.
An increasing majority of Americans do not believe abortion should be legal for any reason at any time during pregnancy. And yet, the U.S. stands with governments of North Korea and China in refusing to restrict abortion even up to the moment of birth. This House, on a bipartisan vote last year, voted to acknowledge the overwhelming scientific evidence that an unborn child being aborted after 20 weeks in the womb experiences pain. It's past time for our colleagues in the Senate to join us in standing up for the innocent by passing the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. I yield back.
Purposes the gentlelady from California seek recognition.
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it has been over 40 years since the Supreme Court decided Roe v. Wade, affirming a woman's constitutional right to make her own health care decisions. In 2012, campaigns across the country, including mine and that of the presidency, were fought and won on this issue. And yet, here we are again. H.R. 7, a bill being considered by the Republicans on the Judiciary Committee, is a shameful attempt to deny a woman a right given to her under our Constitution in pursuit of an ideology that has been repeatedly rejected by the American people. Madam Speaker, that this House would even consider a bill that would require a woman to prove to the IRS that she was raped or the victim of incest in order to have access to affordable health care is beneath the dignity of this body. It is beyond my comprehension. It is reprehensible. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purposes the gentleman from Utah seek recognition? The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, here we are entering the 6th year of the Obama administration, and we have reached a new milestone. It is a shameful and discouraging milestone that directly affects the lives of every working American family. After 7 straight years of decline, this great nation has fallen out of the top 10 most economically free nations. The United States of America, the nation that invented and created the world's greatest middle class, the nation that taught the world the meaning of free enterprise, the nation that figured out more than 200 years ago that greater economic freedom leads to greater individual growth, economic growth, social stability, personal opportunity, has now fallen behind such economic powerhouses as Denmark and Chile and Estonia in economic freedom. And we all pay the price, every American family. Why are we doing this to our children? I hope and I pray that we can reclaim the American dream before it's too late. And I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from New York seek recognition? And the gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, extending federal unemployment insurance will create between 200,000 and 250,000 jobs this year alone and boost GDP by 0.2 percentage points, according to a new report just issued by the Joint Economic Committee Democrats. For every dollar we invest in unemployment insurance, we get back almost $2 in economic activity. That's a great return everyone from Main Street to Wall Street should be able to agree on. The JEC Democrats' report also found that unemployment insurance is one of the most effective tools that we have to keep families out of poverty. Last year alone, the program kept nearly 2.5 million people, including 600,000 children, out of poverty. Allowing federal unemployment insurance to expire is not only wrong on a moral level because it pulls the rug out from under some of our neediest people, it is also an absolutely terrible investment decision for our country's economy. I urge my fellow Democrats and Republicans to extend unemployment insurance.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition? The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, the administration reported this week that they have fallen far short of their goal for signing young, healthy Americans up for new Obamacare plans. Ever since the failure of healthcare.gov to launch properly, the administration has downplayed the importance of enrolling their goal of 7 million Americans in exchange plans. All the recent talk has been about how much more important it is to have a mix of older, sicker Americans and younger, healthier Americans. Now we come to find out that this younger cohort only makes up 24% of enrollees. That is 15% points below their goal. The definition of success keeps changing, and that is exactly why we need Representative Terry's bill to require HHS to give Congress and the American people solid data. We cannot trust officials who keep moving the goalpost and keep assuring us that everything is fine when in reality it keeps failing. It's time we remove the rose-colored glasses and get to the facts. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from New Hampshire seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
The gentlelady is recognized.
One of the most common stories I hear from my constituents is the struggle to survive from paycheck to paycheck and to support their families. Maria Shriver's new report detailing the economic challenges for women in America is in the news this week, and its findings are shocking. We face the alarming reality that 1 in 3 women either live in poverty or are right on the brink. 2/3 of the primary or co-breadwinners in American families are women. Yet women earn just 77 cents for every dollar earned by men performing the same jobs. Ensuring that men and women receive equal pay for equal work isn't just a matter of fairness, it's a matter of economic necessity, especially in these tough economic times. Smaller paychecks and lack of paid family leave for women make it harder for mothers to support their families, purchase health care, send their kids to college, and save for retirement. Congress must take the next step and institute new policies that support women and their families. As a nation, we can and must do better. And I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, modern-day slavery of children will not end without public awareness. So in conjunction with the Polaris Project and Cindy McCain, Clear Channel is donating billboard space around Phoenix to inform the people of Arizona about the despicable crime of human trafficking. Human trafficking increases around major sporting events such as the Super Bowl. New Jersey's getting ready for this year's Super Bowl by doing all they can to fight human trafficking. But Arizona is working to bring awareness a year before their Super Bowl. Human slavery happens right here in America. And until we acknowledge the fact that young girls are being sold on the streets, this despicable crime will continue. I commend Clear Channel and activists and organizations like Cindy McCain and the Polaris Project in their fight against human trafficking. We need to rescue the victims and put the slave traders behind bars. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky seek recognition?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
And the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, the recent developments in our diplomatic efforts to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons have been among the most promising in history. In the interim, Iran has agreed to stop enriching uranium among the necessary level for energy production, dilute its existing stockpile, and allow unprecedented access to its nuclear facilities. During the next 6 months, the administration and the international community will continue working toward a more comprehensive, verifiable agreement that enforces prevention and advances peace in the region. Already, there are devastating consequences for Iran if it does not comply with the agreement. But the progress achieved thus far demonstrates that diplomacy is working. Congressional action now could jeopardize that progress, undermine the diplomatic process, and weaken our nation's position in future negotiations. As an American first, but also as a Jewish American, I strongly support Israel's security and our nation's commitment to preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. I also fully support advancing peace and stability in the Middle East through diplomacy whenever possible. Madam Speaker, we are in the midst of a historic opportunity to prevent nuclear proliferation in Iran, but it is fragile. Congressional interference at such a sensitive time is a high-risk, no-reward proposition. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Next week, our nation will mark 41 years since the Supreme Court legalized abortion with the Roe v. Wade decision. During that time, more than 50 million children have been denied their God-given right to life. Think about that. How different might our world have been had those children been born? One might have cured cancer or been the teacher for your son or daughter. We'll never know. But we do know they all mattered. They all mattered to their Creator. They all would have mattered to their friends and family. As a nation, we must recommit ourselves to defending the God-given right to life, so we're not still wondering what might have been 40 years from now. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from California seek recognition? The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As we debate how to extend unemployment benefits, and I certainly hope we will have that debate, we must remember what this vital lifeline means to real people. Just recently, I held a roundtable discussion with local San Diegans in my district who are struggling to find work. And listening to their stories, I was struck by what a difference these essential benefits make. Eugene, for example, was employed in the healthcare industry until June of 2012. And when his lifeline was cut off shortly after Christmas, Eugene noted how, and I quote him, "Confidence falls, financial pressures mount, anxiety increases, and we begin to take desperate measures just to survive." He added that these federal extensions do make a difference, particularly in the case of having stable housing. It is unfair to let this happen. After all, these benefits were earned by people who've worked and paid into the system. They should be able to put their full energy into getting a job. But if you can't afford housing, if you can't afford transportation to work, then that's nearly impossible to do. We should do the right thing for Eugene and over 1 million fellow Americans by extending this lifeline now.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Dakota seek recognition? The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, North Dakota is known for its strong economy and the lowest unemployment rate in the nation. We're also known as the home of North Dakota State University, or Bison Nation as we like to call it. And while millions of football fans spent the first weekend of the new year probably hoping for global warming and contemplating what a polar vortex is, hardy Bison fans watched and cheered as their beloved Thundering Herd earned a third consecutive Division I football national championship by handily defeating Towson 35-7, capping a perfect 15-0 win-loss record with an exclamation mark. The route to 3 FCS championships includes a record-setting 24 consecutive victories and a 3-year win-loss record of 43-2. Yes, my little state in the middle of the North American continent produces food for a hungry world, energy for a growing economy, technology and industrial products, and enough economic opportunity that every NDSU graduate could not possibly take advantage of. But today, Madam Speaker, I salute the best FCS football program in the United States with a hearty congratulations and a go Bison.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
And the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, as we continue on our economic recovery and debate raising the minimum wage for hard-working Americans, I want to talk today about raising the standard of living for women in America. According to the latest BLS report, the monthly job gains were filled entirely by women in our country. This may seem like great news, but please understand that women's recent gains have been concentrated in low-wage sectors like retail or hospitality. Women still tend to be driven away from the manufacturing sector, which on average pays 17% higher than non-manufacturing jobs. As a result, the pay gap between women and men in our country continues to be an issue. Before Republicans deny an extension of unemployment benefits to job-seeking women everywhere, we need to take a multifaceted, bipartisan approach to solve the pay and job discrepancies. That includes increasing access to STEM education for women and to get them more interested in these manufacturing careers. We have a manufacturing gap in this country that needs to be filled, and women can help do it. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida seek recognition? And the gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize Donna Shalala, the former Secretary of Health and Human Services and the president of my alma mater, the University of Miami. President Shalala is the recipient of the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce Sand in My Shoes Award, given to community leaders who have shown through their exceptional contributions that South Florida really is the best place in which to live and work. Under Donna's leadership, the University of Miami has grown in quality and prominence, is ranked not only as the best university in Florida, but is consistently in the top 50 nationwide, and its undergraduate, sports, law, and medical programs are recognized as some of the best in the country. President Shalala's achievements at the U have strengthened and advanced our unique, diverse, and remarkable community. Donna Shalala is a true champion of South Florida. Congrats, Donna, and go Canes. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The gentlelady from Nevada seek recognition.
Consent to address the House for 1 minute.
And the gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. I rise today with pride and pleasure to congratulate Dr. Michael S. Green, Professor of History at the College of Southern Nevada in Las Vegas, on his recent selection as the recipient of the American Historical Association's 2013 Eugene Asher Distinguished Teaching Award. The AHA, which is the leading professional organization in the country dedicated to the study and testing of history, awards this prize only once a year to recognize outstanding teaching and advocacy for history. This is the first time ever that this prestigious award has gone to a community college professor. Dr. Green's vita is too extensive and impressive to be described in 1 minute, so I will include additional information in my extended remarks for the record. Meantime, let me just say that I can imagine no one more deserving of this award. I commend Dr. Green for this distinction, and I am proud to have him as a friend, a colleague, and a constituent only in District 1. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Maryland seek recognition?
To revise and extend my remarks.
And the gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today as a co-sponsor of H.R. 3824, the Emergency Unemployment Compensation Extension Act. It's unencumbered, it's unconditional, and we could put that on the floor today to extend unemployment benefits for all of those Americans, 1.3 million of them who've lost their unemployment benefits as of December 28th. Now, in the couple of weeks since then, another 218,700 Americans have also lost their unemployment benefits. We're talking about a modest benefit here, Madam Speaker, $313 a week on average to pay for food, housing, gas, to look for a job. Now, over the holidays, I spent some time with unemployed workers at our local electrical union. And for every time that a job appears, 200 workers show up to try to get that job. These people are hardworking, they've earned the benefit, and it's time to put H.R. 3824 on the floor today. Americans must be saying, come on, Congress, get your act together and pass an extended unemployment bill. I yield.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? And the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Improving the fuel efficiency of our cars and trucks is one of the most important things that we can do to fight climate change. And thanks to an executive order signed by President Obama, the federal vehicle fleet is becoming more efficient. And by 2020, it will reduce petroleum use by 30%, saving money and cleaning the air. But the United States Postal Service, which owns and operates the world's largest civilian fleet, is exempt from this critical effort and is heading in the wrong direction on fossil fuel consumption. 141,000 of their vehicles, nearly 3/4 of their delivery fleet, are aging Grumman LLVs, the old mail truck that we see in our neighborhoods every day. Most get less than 10 miles to the gallon, and they're reaching the end of their operational lifespan. To save money and cut emissions, the Postal Service desperately needs a modern, efficient fleet. And that's why I'm introducing the Fleet Act, Federal Leadership in Energy-Efficient Transportation, to close the fuel efficiency gap between the Postal Service and other modern fuel-efficient fleets. A quarter of our nation's greenhouse gases are emitted in the transportation sector. It's time to take our worst fleet and make it into our best fleet.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Illinois seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, please.
And the gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to speak out against the Environmental Protection Agency's recent proposal to lower the amount of biofuels in our gasoline. Every year, the EPA is required to provide guidelines to oil refineries on the amount of biofuels to blend into the fuel we pump into our vehicles. While the EPA has the authority to reduce the amount of biofuels, it never has before. Lowering the amount of biofuels simply defies common sense. This isn't just a proposal that will hurt Illinois rural farmers or our communities in the rural areas, but the economy at large in my home state. It also builds a brick wall in the middle of our nation's path toward energy independence. It threatens to drive up prices at the gasoline pump, and it risks jobs in an industry that really offers real promise. The administration's proposal doesn't even maintain the status quo. It moves us backward, and I see that as unacceptable. I'm proud to lead a bipartisan effort with Congresswoman Kristi Noem in urging the EPA to revise its proposal. Because if energy independence is a national priority, then so too should be biofuels. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, by direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 458 and ask for its immediate consideration.
And the clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 80, House Resolution 458. Resolved, that upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to take from the Speaker's table the bill, H.R. 3547, to extend the application of certain space launch liability provisions through 2014 with the Senate amendments thereto, and to consider in the House, without intervention of any point of order, a single motion offered by the Chair of the Committee on Appropriations or his designee that the House, 1, concur in the Senate amendment to the title, and 2, concur in the Senate amendment to the title with an amendment inserting the text of Rules Committee Print 113-32 in lieu of the matter proposed to be inserted by the Senate. The Senate amendments and the motion shall be considered as read. The motion shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Appropriations. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the motion to adoption without intervening motion or demand for division of the question. Section 2. Upon adoption of this motion specified in the first section of this resolution, House Concurrent Resolution 74 shall be considered as adopted. Section 3. The Chair of the Committee on Appropriations may insert in the Congressional Record not later than January 16, 2014, such material as may deem explanatory of the Senate amendments and the motion specified in the first section of this resolution. Section 4. On any legislative day during the period from January 17, 2014 through January 24, 2014, A. The journal of the proceedings of the previous day shall be considered as approved, and B. The Chair may at any time declare the House adjourned to meet at a date and time within the limits of Clause 4, Section 5, Article 1 of the Constitution, to be announced by the Chair in declaring the adjournment. Section 5. The Speaker may appoint members to perform the duties of the Chair for the duration of the period addressed by Section 4 of this resolution, as though under Clause 8A of Rule 1.
Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized for 1 hour.
Madam Speaker, for the purposes of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to my colleague and friend from Worcester, Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume.
And the gentleman is recognized.
During the consideration of this resolution, all time is yielded for the purposes of debate only. Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, yesterday the Rules Committee met and reported a rule for consideration of H.R. 3547. The rule authorizes the chairman of the Committee on Appropriations to offer a motion to the House that the House concur in Senate amendments with the House amendment consisting of the text of the fiscal year 2014 Omnibus Appropriations Bill. The rule provides for 1 hour of debate, equally divided between the chairman and ranking member of the Committee on Appropriations. Additionally, the rule conforms the title to the content of the bill by providing for the passage of an enrollment correction after adoption of Chairman Rogers' motion. Lastly, Madam Speaker, the rule provides floor management tools to be used during next week's recess. Madam Speaker, I want to commend my good friends Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Lowey for bringing to this House a bipartisan bill that brings to a close the fiscal year 2014 appropriations process while maintaining the Republican commitment to fiscal responsibility. Since Republicans took control of the House, we've cut discretionary spending 4 years in a row, the first time since the Korean War that's occurred. At the same time, this bill provides no new funding for the Affordable Care Act and also includes a pension fix for medically retired personnel and survivor benefit plan annuitants. While there's still work to be done to ensure that we honor the service of our veterans and military retirees, this is a good bipartisan first step. Madam Speaker, I know many of my friends here voted against the Ryan Murray compromise budget, and they voted against the fiscal cliff deal of 2011. However, look at where these pieces of legislation have brought us. We've cut discretionary spending 4 years in a row to a level $164 billion below the fiscal year 2008 level, the last year of the Bush presidency. That's a feat to be commended. We've dealt with tax expenditures in part as a portion of the fiscal cliff deal. Yet despite this progress, we still have not been able to close over $600 billion of our annual budget deficit. Madam Speaker, discretionary spending has paid more than its fair share in dealing with our budget deficit. Entitlements such as Medicare and Medicaid spending and other mandatory programs must be reformed in order to put us on a path to a balanced budget. And with the passage of this omnibus, which releases us from the threat of a government shutdown, we're showing the American people that we actually are capable of working in a bipartisan manner. I hope in the future we can work to capitalize on our bipartisan success and bring America's bloated debt and deficit under control. Madam Speaker, passing this rule and this omnibus spending bill is the responsible thing to do. It's the thoughtful thing to do. As opposed to lurching from crisis to crisis, this omnibus is carefully crafted over a period of many months, and it sets priorities, controls spending, and reasserts congressional authority over the appropriations process far more effectively than yet another continuing resolution ever could. Many of our colleagues have not seen regular order in the appropriations process, and sadly, until the Senate is able to pass bills for us to conference together, I think we'll be forced into relying on omnibuses in the future. But this is not a continuing resolution, and the Ryan Murray Agreement gives us a reasonable foundation for our work in fiscal year 2015. With that, I urge support of the rule and the underlying bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank the gentleman from Oklahoma, my friend Mr. Cole, for yielding me the customary 30 minutes. And I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks and yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Without objection, gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, what we have before us can be described very charitably as a mixed bag. This is a 1,500-page bill that nobody has actually read. It came and this is, by the way, two-sided. It came before the Rules Committee less than 24 hours after it was filed. And because of this rule and the process used to create the bill, no member, no Republican or no Democrat, will have the opportunity to amend it or change it in any way. And to top it all off, this legislative vehicle that the Republican leadership is the legislative vehicle that the Republican leadership is using to rocket this bill over to the Senate is H.R. 3547, the Space Launch Liability Indemnification Extension Act. No wonder the American people think Congress is living on another planet. When people talk about regular order, this ain't it. but we are where we are. And I do want to thank Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Lowey and the House and Senate appropriators for their hard work in putting the underlying omnibus appropriations bill together. I will support this bill very reluctantly because the alternative is far worse. Yet another Republican shutdown of the government. Yet another unnecessary, economically devastating and politically motivated mess. Yet another attempt by congressional Republicans to damage an economy still struggling to recover from the worst recession in our lifetimes. So yes, I will vote for the bill, but we need to curb our enthusiasm. The numbers in this bill are awful. They may be slightly less awful than the Republican sequester numbers, but they're still awful. Fewer kids will be cut from Head Start, but we are nowhere near meeting our educational needs. More funds will be provided for critical medical research, but not enough. There will be more funding for LIHEAP, for our cities and towns, for anti-hunger programs. While it begins to undo the sequester, it does so for only 2 years, and we need to get rid of it forever, permanently. So with this bill, we are waist-deep instead of neck-deep in manure. Hooray, I guess. Even so, I'm sure that many Tea Party members of this House will vote against this bill today because they still think it spends too much. All of the right-wing outside groups who really call the shots around here are whipping hard against it. But more importantly, Madam Speaker, what is missing from this bill or from the Republican leadership's agenda is any acknowledgement of the immediate problem of millions of people who are losing their long-term unemployment benefits. On December 28th, 1.3 million unemployed Americans saw their long-term unemployment insurance expire, including more than 58,000 in Massachusetts. Since then, unemployment insurance has expired for an additional 72,000 more Americans each week. Yet the Republicans continue to do nothing. Let me remind my colleagues how we got here. After a difficult economic period in the early 90s and prolonged budget fights, President Clinton left us with a budget surplus, a surplus that was then squandered through unpaid-for wars and reckless tax cuts championed by President Bush and the Republican Congress. The Clinton surplus turned into a then record deficit that was exacerbated by the global recession that started at the end of the Bush administration. 6 years after President Bush left office, we still have an unacceptable level of unemployment and economy that is getting better for some, while at the same time leaving many behind. And that's where unemployment insurance comes in. This program is a lifeline for millions of people who lost their jobs, most because of the recession and not because of any issues regarding job performance. Unemployment insurance helps millions of families pay their bills and put food on their tables, things they could do if they had jobs, but they can't because they're unemployed. Yet Republicans in the Senate continue to filibuster a bill to extend unemployment insurance, and the House Republican leadership refuses even to consider any bill. We can't even get a bill on this floor so that members of both sides of the aisle can have a chance to express their views. It is shameful, it is unconscionable, and it hurts our economic growth. Madam Speaker, this isn't about some abstract piece of federal policy. This is about the lives of our own citizens. It's about our neighbors who are simply trying to get by. It's about people who want to work and who are willing to work but who need help until they find a new job. They deserve a hell of a lot better than they're getting from this Congress. Madam Speaker, I'm going to urge that we defeat the previous question. And I will offer an amendment to this rule if we defeat the previous question that will allow the House to hold a vote on a clean 3-month unemployment insurance extension. This has been introduced by my colleague from Massachusetts, Congressman Tierney. If Congress doesn't act, over 1 million Americans will be denied the vital relief that they so greatly depend upon. So I'm going to ask unanimous consent to insert the text of the amendment in the record along with extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question.
Without objection.
And Madam Speaker, I will again, before this debate is over, remind my colleagues to vote no and defeat the previous question. And let me just close again by saying we need to move this process forward, and I expect that that's what this omnibus will do. But we're about to leave for a break starting tomorrow, one of the many breaks that the Republican leadership constantly gives us. So we're going to leave town, and meanwhile, all these millions of Americans who are depending on us to help them get through this difficult time are just going to be left alone. We're going to turn our backs on them. That is, to me, unconscionable, and I would urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to stand with us and defeat the previous question so we can deal with this issue on unemployment insurance. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Oklahoma.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds just to respond to my friend.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank my friend for his support of what's a bipartisan bill that the President of the United States has also issued a statement of support. We appreciate that. And I would suggest that we're actually doing what my friend quite often suggests that we do, work in a bipartisan manner, arrive at a common solution. And I would add one thing to my friend's description of the 1990s. You ought to give a little bit of credit to the Republican majority who actually voted for those agreements when most Democrats did not, that balanced the budget, and particularly Speaker Gingrich, because with all due respect to President Clinton, he never once submitted a balanced budget. With that, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to my good friend and colleague from the Rules Committee, classmate, distinguished member from Utah, Mr. Bishop.
Gentleman from Utah, recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to engage in a colloquy with the Agriculture Committee Chairman, Mr. Lucas of Oklahoma, and Interior Appropriations Subcommittee Chairman, Mr. Calvert of California, regarding the issue of federal ownership and payment in lieu of taxes, commonly known as PILT. PILT is a program for counties all across America that are heavily owned by the federal government. Counties in every state except Rhode Island benefit from this program, first established in 1979. PILT helps to offset the loss of property tax revenue caused by the presence of federal land. The federal government is the largest landowner in the United States, and PILT fulfills the federal government's obligation to the local communities where the ownership presence is the greatest. 1 out of every 3 acres in our country is federally owned. And as you can see from the map, most of this land is concentrated in the West. Counties with federal land in their jurisdiction are denied property tax revenues typical of communities with privately owned land, and that diminishes the tax base, which hinders rural communities from fulfilling some of the most basic functions such as public safety. PILT's previous funding has expired, and now we are in a situation where we have to find a new source. We were pleased yesterday when the Speaker and Majority Leader pledged their support to the Western Caucus that qualified counties would receive 2014 funding. Subcommittee Chairman Calvert, as we continue to work on 2014 funding matters, it seems apparent that funding for PILT will be included in other important legislative vehicles in the near future. Is that your understanding? And I yield to the gentleman from California.
The gentleman is correct. PILT has been a mandatory program under the jurisdiction of authorizing committees since fiscal year 2008. Fiscal year 2007 was the last year that PILT was funded with discretionary funds. In fact, funding for PILT last year was provided within the MAP 21 transportation bill. Had PILT been provided in the Interior Division of the omnibus, the committee would not have been able to adequately address other critical issues important to the Western members. PILT is very important to my own state of California, which is the largest recipient of PILT payments, with over $41 million received in fiscal year 2013. Like my good friend, I'm absolutely committed to securing PILT funding for our counties in fiscal year 2014. It is my understanding that Chairman Lucas has agreed to carry PILT funding in the Farm Bill in the conference report. Chairman Lucas, do you concur?
Madam Speaker, I yield my friend an additional 2 minutes.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 additional minutes.
Yes, Mr. Calvert, I do. I've already had a preliminary conversation with Chairwoman Stabenow, who is a strong supporter of the PILT funding, as well as Chairman Hastings of the House Natural Resources Committee, whose committee oversees the program. I also have the backing of House Republican leadership, and I can assure you both that it is my intention to provide funding for PILT in the final conference committee agreement on the Farm Bill. I am very much aware of the importance of this program for rural communities across America in providing funding for necessary functions like police, education, and infrastructure. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss this important issue, and I look forward to working with you in this on the very near future.
Thank you.
Thank you. We yield back.
Gentleman from Utah yields back. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Madam Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin. I'm sorry, 2 minutes to the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, the ranking member of the Committee on Ways and Means.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you to the gentleman for yielding. More than 1.5 million long-term unemployed have now been cut off unemployment insurance with the expiration of the federal program, thrown out of work through no fault of their own, and desperately looking for a job. They are powerless, and to many in Washington, they are nameless, only a number. So those who oppose extending this lifeline of unemployment insurance can talk about their compassion, but rather than meeting and talking with Americans searching for work, they are throwing them to the wolves, whether of hunger, helplessness, or even homelessness. We, I promise everybody, will strive to help change that these next 11 days as House Republicans recess. Consider this, when Walmart advertised 600 jobs in D.C., 23,000 people applied. When a dairy plant was reopened in Hagerstown, Maryland, 1,600 people applied for a few dozen jobs. This should not be a partisan issue. Republicans are making it such with their cold shoulder and their stonewall in this House. It is unconscionable for Republicans to close down this House without lifting a single finger to help 1.5 million Americans and to prevent a vote by those of us ready to act. It is unconscionable. I yield back.
Gentleman from Michigan yields back. Gentleman from Oklahoma.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, the great member from Mississippi, Mr. Palacio.
Gentleman from Mississippi recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank Chairman